Hello again, my name is Sydney. I'm sure some of you remember me from the first video. I'm with the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association, or NSEA, and I'm excited to be back today to give you a conclusion to all the videos you've watched so far. From the first introduction video, we learned about watersheds, the 3 C's, and all 5 different species of salmon. Did you teach anyone the 5-finger hand trick? In the second video, Isabel led us through a scientific investigation of Whatcom Creek. She tested water quality, and we saw a few examples of aquatic macroinvertebrates, those little bugs that salmon fry eat, which live in the water and teach us about water health. In this video, we're going to wrap up all that we've done so far and learn a few new things about how we can help salmon in our lives every day. Before we dive into the small actions that we can take to help salmon, I want to first show you a video that gives a few examples of local scientists working outside. So far, you've been learning and observing about salmon like a scientist. Now, when I say the word scientist, it might be different than the idea you have about what a scientist looks like. Close your eyes and imagine what a scientist looks like. What are they wearing? Where are they working? You might see a white lab coat, glasses, beakers and tools, and all of this inside of a laboratory. Some even imagine a scientist looks like this. But in reality, a scientist can look any way. Most of the scientists that I know are walking around in the middle of a stream with big long boots on, testing for water quality. Being a scientist isn't about what you're wearing, it's about making observations, asking questions, and collecting data. This video will show us some examples of scientists in our area that work outside. I hope you learn something new and maybe feel inspired for what you want to do when you grow up.
Andrew Townsend, and I'm a park aide for Larrabee State Park. I monitor the wildlife, make sure things are safe for them, things are healthy for them. I do a lot with campground registration with folks just coming in and out of that campground. Almost a little bit of customer service in there as well.
My name is Ari Blatt, and I work for the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association as the Habitat Monitoring Coordinator. And this means that I get to go out to restoration sites where we've been to before, see how many returning adult salmon are coming back, and see how the plants are surviving, and see how the water quality is changing as these sites age after the restoration has occurred.
I'm Annalise Burns, and I'm a wetland scientist. I work for the City of Bellingham, but I also owned my own consulting business for a long time.
So I'm Ona. I'm a senior at Ferndale High School, and I'm planning to go into environmental science of some sort in college and as a career, hopefully.
My name is Jim Halfield, and I'm a professor at Huxley College of the Environment at Western Washington University.
My name is Julie Barber, and I'm the senior shellfish biologist for the Swinomish Indian tribe, which means that I basically oversee a program that works with oyster restoration, gooey duck management, sea cucumber management, intertidal clam work, kind of anything that is a shellfish.
I'm a
graduate student here at Western Washington University, and I am looking at seal diet in the Puget Sound.
Yummy!
One of the ways we do that is by collecting their poop and looking through it for bones and squid beaks and stuff like that.
Ew!
Cool.
Favorite part of my job is that I get to work outside.
I really love being able to be outside, rain or shine, working in places like this and learning how to identify plants and the different salmon species really makes me feel connected to things besides myself, and that's a really good feeling, to feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself.
Favorite part of my job is that I get to go out in the woods and go exploring. I get to go off trail and I get to search for where wetlands are, where streams are, and I get to find wildlife, birds and mammals that most people don't get to see.
I'd say the coolest part of my job is being able to go outside all year long and get paid to play in the mud. Just be curious, go outside and ask questions, search for volunteer opportunities, and just experience all that there is to offer.
Whenever I go to the NSEA events, there's a bunch of families with kids helping out, and they seem to be having a great time. So I'd say get outside, spend time in nature, and do as much restoration as you can. Pick up trash when you're outside, maybe be a part of some NC work parties.
I think aside from going to school and studying hard and working hard, it's so important to just go outside, especially if you're interested in science and biology in particular. Just go outside and be curious. And so I have a lot of jobs that got me outside, and in being outside I learned things like how to drive a boat and how to haul oyster bags back and forth. And so I think yes, education is important, but just being innately curious and going outside and learning from your own environment makes you a good scientist.
I would say I would encourage you to try hard at school, not just in science and math, but also in art, history, and everything else, just to be well-rounded. I would also say a good idea is to spend as much time as you can outside and pay attention to what you see around you while you're outside. And lastly, I think it's a good idea to volunteer with an organization like NSEA, where you can get experience learning how to collect data.
If students are involved, want to get involved in science, I think a great thing that they could do is talk to their families. If you want to get into marine science, talk to your families, find out when a low tide is in your area during the spring and summer, and go out onto the beaches, whether it be out at Locust Beach or Larrabee State Park, and see what's living in your area.
I hope you enjoyed that video. I heard them say the word outside pretty often. Though these environmental scientists work outside, remember there are many options when it comes to doing scientific work. And there is a lot of work out there to be done to help salmon. If you've ever been to an NC work party, you might have planted a tree along a stream. Planting trees and removing invasive species are just a few ways that we can help salmon habitat. But there are actually so many things we can do, big and small, to help salmon. Many actions we take to help salmon will also have a positive impact on the environment as a whole. It's safe to say that what helps salmon helps the environment, and vice versa. They are connected. The ideas we run through today will help us understand small actions we can take to make a positive difference on the natural world around us. So here's how this activity is going to work. Each card will have a sentence at the top, and it is our task to decide whether or not that is something that helps salmon or hurts salmon. After we choose, then we get to come up with a reason why. We can do an example together first. This card says, "Teach my family and friends about salmon." This one might be obvious. Teaching others will probably be helpful. I think this could be helpful because if we teach each other what we know, maybe they will be inspired to help salmon too, and then our efforts will be doubled. Okay, this next card says, "Leave pet waste on the ground." Pause this video for a few seconds and decide whether or not this is hurtful or helpful. Remember to come up with a reason why. Now that you've had a chance to think, let's review it together. I think leaving pet waste on the ground instead of picking it up could be hurtful for salmon. Most pet waste is full of harmful bacteria that can pollute our waterways. When we learned about watersheds, we learned that rain that falls on the ground eventually makes its way out to the ocean. On the way, the water flow can pick up all kinds of pollution. So no matter where there is pet waste, it can easily flow into waterways after the next big rainfall. We can pick up our pet's waste and dispose of it to help keep our waterways clean. Moving on, this card says, "Use less water." What effect do you think using less water would have on salmon? Pause this video and think about it. I think using less water could be helpful for salmon. Do you know where the water comes from when you turn on your faucet? In our area, drinking water comes from a few different groundwater sources. Some examples are Lake Whatcom and the Nooksack River. But don't worry, this water is thoroughly clean before it gets to us. But when we turn on our water from the faucet, that water is directly being taken out of waterways that other living things in our ecosystem rely on. When we use less water, there is more water for everything else to use. Now, when I say use less water, I don't mean drink less water. Drink as much water as you need to stay hydrated. There are many other ways that we can find to use less water. A few examples include turning off the water when you brush your teeth or taking shorter showers. Moving on, this card says, "Wash your car on the concrete driveway." Pause this video and decide, is this helpful or hurtful? I think this action could have a harmful impact on salmon. When you wash your car, all of the water and soap that you're using, along with the dirt and pollutants that you're washing off the car, will drain into the storm drains on the street. These storm drains often do not have any filters before it flows into a nearby creek or even the ocean. That means all of the soaps and harmful chemicals you use to clean could go directly into salmon habitat. Instead, you can bring your car to a car wash where the soapy water is filtered and in many cases reused, which helps save water too. Okay, moving on to the last card. This one says, "Eat/buy local." Do you know what the word local means? It means nearby or close by. So this card is asking if buying or eating things near to us is helpful or hurtful. What do you think? Pause this video and decide. So this one is a little tricky, but I think that eating or buying local can help salmon. To help us understand why, I'll give you a scenario. Imagine that you go to the grocery store and buy a plum from Peru. How would it travel all the way to Washington State, where we live? It could travel by truck, plane, boat, or train, which all need fuel to move, and often these fuel sources cause pollution to our environment. Trucks, boats, and planes all use gas and oil, which burn and create greenhouse gases and contribute to climate change. This has a larger negative effect not only on salmon, but the environment as a whole. So when we buy local, like at a farmer's market, less transportation is needed to get your products. Buying locally can also be helpful by supporting your community members by paying for their products. So before we end our lesson, we're going to review a little bit of what we learned and emphasize the difference that you can make. In this photo, we see an unhealthy habitat for salmon. There's so much litter. Think for a second about what action you could take to make this a healthier habitat. This one's a little easy. You could pick up the garbage. In this next photo, we see a few pets very close to the river. When pets are in a river, they could accidentally disturb salmon habitat, and their waste could easily pollute the water, like we talked about earlier. To help prevent this damage, do you remember what we can do? That's right. We could pick up and properly dispose of their waste. This last photo is a little bit harder. Can you see what's wrong in this photo? Take a few seconds to think about it. This stream bank is eroding and it's dropping dirt into the water. This could cause it to be unclear. Going back to what we learned in the first lesson, what action do you think could prevent erosion? One of the actions that I think of are planting trees. Planting trees would help stabilize the stream bank, and the tree roots would hold the dirt in place, keeping the water clean, one of the 3 C's. Now we have a few new ways that we can use to make the world a healthier place for salmon and every other living thing. Though some things we talked about might not seem related to salmon, remember that even those small actions can make a big difference. When more people get inspired to make small changes, together they can create a great positive change. While thinking of ways you can personally make a difference, we would love it if you completed the Salmon Pledge. This pledge is like a promise to do what you can to help. It's unrealistic to pledge that you will plant a tree every day, but think of something that would be an easy and realistic change for you. We talked about a few things you could do, like turning off the water when you brush your teeth, picking up your dog's waste, or even teaching your friends about salmon and what you've learned. But there are so many other small actions you can do, so don't limit yourself to what we've mentioned. Here are a few examples of salmon pledges that 4th graders have shared with us this year. You can find a blank salmon pledge on our website at www.n-sea.org/educate, EDUCATE. I hope you hang your pledge somewhere you can see it every day and remind yourself of the difference that you can make. We had such a great time teaching you about salmon, and we're so glad that you have completed the whole series of videos with us. I hope you learned something new about salmon in our region and feel inspired to learn more. You can always reach out to myself or Isabel if you have any questions that were not answered in this lesson. Thank you again for watching.